All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we want to welcome you to Focus on Liberia. And as always, we are broadcasting from our headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. Anthony is here in with my partner, Dennis Job. But before Dennis can come in, let me share with you what we are doing in this special edition of Focus on Liberia. We have a guest in studio comfortably seated to help us understand something very significant that is a huge challenge to our people in Liberia, and that is internet. The current state of internet in Liberia is our topic that we will be discussing in this very, very special edition of our broadcast here. I focus on Liberia. Dennis, I am set. Let's get started and welcome to the show.
We want to welcome all viewers from across the globe, and we want to welcome our guest tonight, Dr. Lionel Bernard. He's an IT executive and also an author. Dr. Bernard, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you for having me.
And maybe your third time on the show. We are glad to have you.
Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm always looking forward to the conversations, the in-depth conversations, and the variety of topics that are discussed on this show. You guys are doing very well, and I commend you.
Thank you. Thank you. We try. And ladies and gentlemen, internet is no small, everywhere now we have internet. At a time, everything is just .com. Go to www.this.com. So your internet is everywhere. But how is it in Liberia? I come from Dudwicken, where we never used to get ELBC. It's always ELWA. So things like the coup of 1980, we did not hear about it until 6 p.m. during the global program. Oh. So internet is not small thing, okay? Now I'm happy that people can go some part in Dodo can stand somewhere and call me, and I get that. But internet. And with internet, I think most, if not all, our problem can be solved because information is power. And so we have Dr. Lionel Bernard, who's an IT, information technology executive. Some call him an IT guru. And he has written books. Dr. Bernard, again, we are glad to have you. Let me pass it on back to my man, as soon as Sia, who like to drive this kind of discussion. Mr. Sia.
Dennis, thank you. And I'm prepared to drive this because the guy who knows the stuff is here to help us understand these things. And folks, let us give you all that we'll be covering today with our guest. First, we will talk about internet access options and the problems in Liberia. Of course, we will start with the current state of internet in Liberia, and then we'll come to access options and the problems there are with those options. And of course, we'll look at the cost of internet in Liberia. We will talk about regulation concerning internet in Liberia. There is something I don't know. They call it ACE cable. What is it? He will let us know. Our guest is here. Also, we will talk about improving Liberia's national network infrastructure. You will get to know what is network infrastructure here. Our guests will help us to understand that and the benefits of having an internet infrastructure in Liberia. He will also help us about studies that has been done on Liberia's national network infrastructure. He will let us know, and we will also talk about the cost and benefit of a network infrastructure. And this is the juiciest part, folks, the Liberian economy and internet access. How can we use internet to help improve the Liberian economy? The economy, Dennis, if you don't know, is the blood of the country. If you don't have an economy, you are dead.
And right now, they say the economy is in the toilet. That's how somebody would describe it. So how can we use internet to improve that and get it out of the hole?
Exactly. He will help us to know that. And there are some things going on in the world. Liberia is lacking behind. But now will help us. Google and Facebook project to improve internet access in Africa. Liberia is missing out. What information is out there that we as a country and people can capitalize on to solve this problem that is keeping us behind? Oh, cybersecurity. I'm worried about this. He will tell me not to worry, but I want to hear that first. And last but not the least, compared to other countries, is internet more expensive in Liberia? Wow, that is a laundry list there for our guests. but I guarantee you he can prepare. My man, let's get started. The current state of internet in Liberia, and this is my first question to you. How will you classify the current state of internet in Liberia, and why will you classify it that way?
And Mr. Sia, before he comes in, because I studied this stuff as well.
Oh,
so, yeah, I do this stuff. So, Dr. Bernard, let's lay the foundation first. Let's see in your introductory comments. Let us know. I already introduced your IT executive, but talk a little bit about your background that qualify you to speak on this particular subject with the kind of ease and understanding that our people desperately need right here on Focus on Liberia.
Well, Dennis and Anthony, thanks again for having me on your program. You're absolutely right. I need to introduce myself. I've been an IT professional and an executive for about 30 years. And I started my career as a software engineer, and I moved on into to managing networks, managing telecommunication systems for the U.S. government. And I've also been an IT executive for the past 10 years in the federal government as well as in the private sector. I've written several books about technology, including one about Liberia, technology sector in Liberia called Broadband Coming. You can find it on Amazon. I've been a guest speaker at several conferences, technology conferences, and so I've been, my entire career has been focused on managing technology, building technology, developing technology policy, and I have done quite a bit of work in Liberia in terms of providing consultation to regulators in Liberia, consultation to the government. I've written a number of articles on the technology sector in Liberia. Matter of fact, I'm a pretty humble person, but I must say that two things to my credit regarding Liberia's internet and technology sector. The first is that it was an article that I wrote in 2004 titled "The Privatization of the Telco." And in that article, I called for regulation. I outlined specific measures that needed to be taken to establish a regulatory agency to regulate telecom. Because at the time, we were being introduced to cellular service. We had several carriers, and there was no regulatory agency. They were pretty much doing things on their own. So I outlined exactly how to establish this agency. And fast forward 3 years later, there was an act that was passed in the Liberian legislature called the Telecom Act of 2007, and they used my article to create this act. And so I can say that I'm the one that initiated the establishment of the Liberian Telecommunications Authority. Also, in my book Broadband Coming, I wrote a lot about how me and some partners of mine and I worked towards bringing the first undersea fiber cable to Liberia, and this transformed telecommunications in Liberia, because prior to that, all of the telcos, Lone Star, Commune, and Novaphone, and Libercell at the time, as well as Cellcom, were all using satellite to communicate, to allow Liberians to communicate overseas. But now all of that traffic is being routed through this undersea cable, which is a lot more reliable, and it has reduced the cost of internet in Liberia. So I'm a lifelong technologist, as a writer, and as a professional, and as a Liberian as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard, for that excellent detailed introduction of yourself, thereby assuring our audience that the guest we have brought to discuss this very, very important topic knows what he's here to discuss. And I'm sure they're going to pay attention. And what we will learn from you, we hope that policy experts in Liberia, opinion leaders, and our leaders in Liberia will also take the information and use it to better the internet system in Liberia. Dennis, this is your area too. You are the IT guy, but this guy is, big in the technology thing. I'm the guy who doesn't know anything, but I still need some of the skills from you though. So let's get started here quickly. The current state of internet in Liberia, and like I said earlier, The first question is, looking at Liberia today, how will you classify the current state of internet in Liberia, and why will you classify it that way?
Well, that's a very good question, and it's something I've reflected on over the past few months. And you know, if the analogy I would use is if I were a teacher, and you know, the internet in Liberia was my student, you know, what kind of grade would I give it? So essentially, on reflection and looking at different variables such as the affordability of internet. As we know, internet is pretty expensive in Liberia, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit more later on. So based on their affordability, based on the reliability, I'm sure you all have heard the people saying it's the internet. When you call someone in Liberia and the phone disconnects for one reason or another, they'll tell you, say, oh, that the network, something wrong with the network. So in terms of reliability, in terms of affordability, and also in terms of accessibility, as Dennis was saying earlier, in his town back in the days, they didn't have they have very limited TV access to television. It's the same thing that's going on currently in Liberia. Is that if you live in a rural area, say you live in Tapeta or Wanjaba, or you live in near the Ivorian border, Danane, or even Hopper, you know, you have very limited internet access in those areas. So in those three factors, affordability, reliability, as well as accessibility in rural areas, you know, I would give the internet access in Liberia, I would give it a grade of C minus. And that's my opinion in that regard. So as far as the state, it's the reason why I give it that grade is because we've made a lot of progress as far as the access to internet. I mean, 10 years ago, we only had landline phones in Liberia, and you know, most of those who are in the telecom field know that landline requires a wire coming directly to your house to gain that access. So we only had about 50,000 Liberians with a phone. You know, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, it was very hard to get a phone. LTC was not out there giving out phones left and right. So, you know, you had to wait years and months just to get a phone. So the cellular companies coming in early 2000 changed all of that. So access has expanded. No matter where you are in Liberia, if you have a phone, a 2G phone, 3G phone, you can get, you can make voice and text calls, and you can get online in some way or another. But we still have a long way to go. In terms of the state of our internet. You know, we're in a digital world now. Every single communication is now online. All of our interactions are online, especially considering the COVID situation, where a lot of people are working from home. A lot of people are going to school from home. A lot of people are interacting through the internet. So it becomes critical that the internet infrastructure be on par with the demand for it. And so we have a lot of shortcomings in Liberia. We have a lot of shortcomings in regulation as well in Liberia. We have a lot of shortcomings in terms of, besides access, in terms of affordability. So with all of these things, we're a C minus as far as internet, the state of internet in Liberia.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of room for improvement.
Thank you. And Dennis, before you come in, we'll get to the affordability and all that. But Dennis, I'm just curious. I know you want to come in here. You are an IT professional. He gave Liberia current state of internet a C minus. What does that mean to you? I mean, you understand that?
Yeah, C minus, and that's where my question was coming from. You know, a C minus means, well, we're not doing well, but we have really moved far ahead. I remember, people used to go to the French cable, line up there just to make a call. You know, but now, as I said, people as far as Balatoa or in can make a call, even all the way. So I mean, we've come along. We've come along far. But Dr. Bernard, what is the difference now? Because from the internet, talking about the French cable and when we used to go to your uncle's office at Telecom just to make a call, that was the landline. What is the difference between now the internet use and what we were using before? You know, the because telecommunication now is cell phone, so that's form of internet. So break it down between So how is this cell phone now part of internet access? And how was it different than using landline? Was that not internet, of course? What was it?
Well, back in the days before 2000, before the advent of Lone Star, Lone Star was the first carrier to introduce cellular services in Liberia. Most Liberians, if you needed to call your neighbor or your friend, or most companies used the landline service that was provided by then LTC, Liberian Telecommunications Company, as what we know of as Telecom. So Telecom was essentially a monopoly for telecommunication services in Liberia. During the era of telecom, internet was very restricted. Um, if you needed internet access, you had to go to a cafe of some sort and pay maybe $1 or $5 for an hour or a few minutes. I think you guys remember those days. Internet cafes have gone by the wayside. There's still a few of them around. So essentially, pre cellular era, to gain internet access in Liberia, you could either get it through a cafe, and there were a few ISPs in the country, but essentially they were using satellite connection to give you access to internet. And I would say that maybe 1 or 2% of the Liberian population at the time had access to internet in the country, had home access to internet. Fast forward to current day Liberia, the event of Lone Star. Before there was Cellcom, there was Comium, there was also Librarian. So at one point we have 4 different companies providing internet. Currently there are only 2. There are 4. There are also 4 major companies, but now we're accessing internet in a different way in Liberia. So there are 3 ways to access internet in Liberia right now. One is it's called mobile internet. So you use your cell phone and you access the internet. You buy data from the cell phone carrier. 1 gig of data, you pay maybe $2 for it. If you want 10 gigs of data, you pay about $20 for it. So you access the internet from your cell phone. Another way to access the internet is by fixed wired or fixed wireless. And what fixed wireless means is that you've seen those hotspots that Orange sells in Liberia. They're these small little dongle devices, and you have to put a SIM card in them, and you buy credit to top it up, just like your phone, and you can connect your laptop or your any other device directly to it to gain internet access. That's called fixed mobile internet. That's called fixed wireless internet. There's also fixed wired internet, which means that we now have some fiber cable running around like Monrovia, and as far as Robert Field, if you're within the service area, then you can get access to that fiber connection, which is a lot faster than your wireless internet. So those are the 3 options you have now. The speed has gone up significantly from back in the days when you were using a dial-up modem or going to a cafe. Currently, you can get as high as 5 megabits per second, or even maybe 10 megabits per second. But it's very expensive and not affordable by a lot of people. So right now, 90% of Liberians are using their phones to gain access to the internet. And the reason for that is twofold. The first is that internet, a lot of people are using smartphones now. Those are the phones that have icons on them. Whereas back in the days, people had the 2G phones where you can only make voice calls and do text. So now smartphones have become more affordable for anybody in Liberia. I think the average price is like $25 for one of those those Chinese phones. I can't remember the name of it, but the cost of smartphones has gone down. The cellular companies in Liberia have expanded their networks into rural areas. So a lot of people do have access to mobile internet in Liberia, but it's still very expensive and it's still not reliable. And in some areas, you only have maybe 3G access or 2G access even, which is really slow as far as internet access. So those are the options there that you have with fixed wired and fixed wireless internet. Those are more in the Monrovia area, and they're very expensive. They can go as high as $400 for 50 gigabits of internet service or 5 megabits per second of internet service within my area. But if you live in a rural area, say if you live in Ganta or somewhere, you don't have access to that kind of fixed internet service. You may have access to the Orange or Lone Star internet by using their hotspots or their USB, which is it's fairly slow. But the high-speed internet that's prevalent in other countries is only available in the Monrovia area.
And who's using that in Monrovia?
Well, if a lot of businesses are using it, a lot of government agencies are using it. Libtelco provides internet access to all of the government agencies. Most of the embassies use Libtelco, and the reason Libtelco is able to do that, they provide internet access to large companies and large institutions, and they're able to do that because they own a fiber network within the Monrovia area. It's called a metropolitan fiber optic network. And I can explain for the viewers what fiber means compared to cellular tower internet access, which is very different. If you're accessing your internet from a fiber a connection, it's likely very fast and very reliable. But if you're accessing your internet, which most Liberians do, from a cellular tower on a 3G connection, it's going to be fairly slow. All right, compared to it's not going to allow you to stream video as clearly as you would. It's not going to allow you to do video calling and all of those fancy things, because that requires a lot of bandwidth, and your cellular tower simply doesn't have that bandwidth. Whereas the fiber connection under the ground, dark fiber, lit fiber is very expensive to access it. So the telco offers that, as well as Lone Star offers those services. But again, they're cost prohibitive to most Liberians.
All right, folks, you are watching Focus on Liberia. This is a Saturday special. We are discussing the current state of internet in Liberia. Our guest is Dr. Bernard, who is a professional in this field of work. He has been doing this for 30 years. Let's come to the cost. I know you tried to talk about it, the cost of internet in Liberia. For the understanding of those of us who don't know more about these things, I know I have a cell phone. I know I access internet through my service provider. But this time we're talking about folks in Liberia. They provide us what they don't have, for which the service they're providing to folks in Liberia is so slow and at the same time expensive. What are they lacking, for which is that way?
Anthony, that's a really good question. If you own a cell phone in Liberia, if you have a cell phone, whether it's Lone Star or Orange, which are the two main remaining telecommunications company that operate in that market, you're required to have a SIM. There are GSM operators. Now, the difference between GSM and CDMA is that GSM requires that you use a SIM card, whereas CDMA doesn't require a SIM card. But you cannot move your SIM card from one phone to another with CDMA. Lone Star the telco used to be CDMA, but GSM is the standard that Lone Star and Orange adhere to. So if you have a phone in Liberia, whether it's you can either have a 4G phone or a 3G phone, which is the older model phones. 5G is not in Liberia yet. So if you're calling your relatives in the U.S. to send you a 5G phone, you're wasting your time, because we don't have the infrastructure to support that in Liberia. So the way it works, as far as the cost of service, phone or data service in Liberia, is that if you have your SIM card and you have your phone, you have to buy credit in the form of data. All right, and the carriers sell data separately, so you have to buy carrier data, and the cost of it is about $2 for 1 gig. All right, so you buy 1 gig of data, you top up the data on your phone, and what that allows you to do is you can surf the internet, you can come on Facebook, you can visit websites, but they also set a limit on how long you can use. They set an expiration date on that data. So if you buy 1 gig of data now, and you can say, okay, I'm gonna set an expiration date of 7 days. Right. So after 7 days, even if you haven't used that 1 gig of data, you lose it. If you set an expiration date of 30 days to use that 1 gig, then the cell phone company reduces the data to about 600 megs. So that's some of the tricks that they're playing. So that's costing Liberians quite a bit in terms of affordability. Is that this 1 gig, you're supposed to buy it and own it for as long as you want. There shouldn't be an expiration date on the data. And also, if you have to buy a separate credit for voice and text. Remember now, if you're just calling someone, locally or even in the U.S. by voice or sending a text, you have to buy a separate data bucket credit for that, and a separate data credit for browsing the internet. So that's the perspective of cost in terms of if you're mobile, if you have a cell phone in Liberia. And the same thing applies if you're trying to get on the internet. If you have a USB modem, you have to buy the modem. It costs $9 to buy the modem. You can also buy a hotspot from Lone Star or from Orange, and it costs about $60. But the same thing applies. You've got to buy your data credit to apply to this to these devices to surf the internet. And the other problem that I've observed is that here in the U.S., Verizon, T-Mobile have similar plans where you buy 10 gigabits of data. That is if you're on the limited plan.
Right.
You buy 10 gigabits of data. They offer a 10 gigabits and as well as a 20 gigabits plan for $40 a month. They don't tell you when it expires. You can use it. When it expires, you get an alert. Oh, you're running out of data. And it's at your discretion. You pay for it. You can use it as long as you want. If you don't use it by the end of the billing cycle, which is usually 30 days, it rolls over into the next month. So if you only use 8 gigabits of your 10 gigabit data within this month, it rolls over into the next month. So you get 2 additional gigabits of data credit for the next month. That's not the case in Liberia. They set an expiration date. But not only that, a lot of customers have been complaining about something called rapid depletion. And what that means is that if I buy 1 gigabit of data and there's a 7-day expiration on it, or if I buy say 20 gigabits of data for $60 or $70, I expect that to last probably a whole month, right? Because that's similar, in the year in most developed countries, that's how long that typically lasts. But a lot of customers have been complaining that the data is being expired or runs out too quickly. You see what I'm saying? So people are getting, waking up 2 or 3 days later after buying 20 gigabits of data. And that's a lot of data. And getting an alert that your data has expired or is finished without having used it.
Give me an idea about this. Give me an idea about this data, gig of data. Let's say I got 1 gig of data. How much, and I've been treated fairly. How much time can I surf the internet and use my phone, calling, texting, and everything else in Liberia? What does 1 gig of data mean?
Well, 1 gig of data means that you can visit, you can surf Facebook, say for at least 3 or 4 days. You can stream, a small video, maybe stream like, an episode of your favorite TV show on Netflix. And you can, surf the web for at least 3-4 days. By conventional standards. But in Liberia, if you even start, watching a movie or having a video chat with 1 gig, within a few hours it's gone. So there's suspicion that there may be some rapid depletion process going on with the carriers because they make money. If you buy more data, if you're using up the data quick enough, you have to buy more data, right? So they have an incentive to expedite your data usage so that you can buy more data. And regulation needs to go in place or monitor that process so that the consumers are not being exploited. You see what I'm saying? So this is a big problem that's in Liberia, is imposing a unnecessary burden on the consumers because they're buying. One of the tenets of mobile service regulation is that the customer has to be protected from exploitation, and that applies to any kind of product that's on the market. If you're selling sandals, right, and the sandals keep breaking up when everybody wears them, people are going to complain about it. But in this case, data is such an essential resource for most people that, you have to use your phone. You got to get on the internet. So a lot of people don't have any option, even if their data runs out too quickly. And I've heard stories where you buy $50 worth of data and it's gone within a week, which is absolutely, unrealistic. So there needs to be some either some sort of action in that regard to protect customers, and that's what's called. That's why I give the state of internet in Liberia a C, because the customers are not being protected adequately.
Wow, folks, you're watching Focus on Liberia. This is a Saturday special. We are discussing the current state of internet and its connectivity in Liberia, if I can pull it that way. Lionel, let me come to this aspect. The quality of internet in Liberia, we agree, is poor. What are the infrastructure needed by the service providers in Liberia for them to be able to provide reliable internet? Is it because they don't have the quality of infrastructure that they need? I mean, what are their own challenges for which the services there are not that reliable as the folks in Liberia continue to complain about?
Yeah, it's infrastructure is a big part of the problem. Besides affordability, you're absolutely right. Mm-hmm. The way internet access works is that it's sort of like a highway system, right? Mm-hmm. Think of it, if the entire country only has, or if there aren't highways all over the country, then people can't move around as freely as they need to. Agriculture stalls because there's a cost overhead of transporting your agricultural goods from one place to another. Mm-hmm. But if there's only one, there's a highway with 2 lanes on it, then traffic will flow, pretty well. But once you have too many cars on that road, traffic is going to start stalling. It's going to create a bottleneck because the road is not big enough. If you build 2 more lanes on that road, so you have a 4-lane highway now, traffic is going to flow a lot smoother. If you build a 3-lane road, it's going to flow even smoother. So that's sort of the infrastructure problem we're having in Liberia. Now, most of our internet is coming from cellular towers that are all over the country. That's why you can get access in Bapolu, in River Cess, and all over the place, because the cell phone companies have invested in the infrastructure all over the country because they have an easy incentive to do that. They want more customers. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that because we're in the digital age now, most of the traffic is not voice anymore. The infrastructure that we have in Liberia is suitable for voice communication. You can pick up the phone and call someone. But right now, how many of us, even right here on this this meeting, have called someone in Liberia using WhatsApp or using Signal or using one of those apps to call? So that's the trend now, is that more people are using data to call. More people are streaming videos online. More people are accessing high bandwidth content. So this is websites that have all kinds of bells and whistles on it. Most people are using apps. So the old model of an infrastructure that supports voice and text is going away. The new model, the new infrastructure has to support data, which is becoming much more prevalent. So Liberia has so the way you measure that is actually pretty simple. Like in order the demand in 2040, right? Liberia is going to have, the population is going to go up to say 6 million people. Currently, we have 4.5 million people. It's going to go up. What does that mean for infrastructure? It means that you're going to have more people using cell phones, more people streaming information from the internet, more people needing access to data. All right. So the question becomes, can our infrastructure support that? And the answer is no, because we currently have, in order to build that highway that has 6 lanes on it, so everybody can fit on there and do whatever they need to do online, we need a fiber optic infrastructure in the country. And right now, we've only got about 200 miles of fiber optic cable across the entire country. And it's mostly in the Monrovia area. It goes as far as Bummy, and it goes as far as RIA. But you need a fiber optic infrastructure to improve the access to internet, the speed of internet, even the affordability of internet. Ghana has.
How do we get that?
Well, other countries have done it, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. Like Ghana has done that. They have about 8,000 miles of fiber optic all across the country. So the internet is very fast, right? It's not a network issue anymore. And more people have access to the internet, even in rural area, fast internet. How do we do that? Well, there have been a couple of options on the drawing board so far. And first, you got to ask yourself: is there a reason to do that besides the fact that there's going to be a stronger demand, growing demand for internet access? Is there a reason to do that? Do librarians really need internet access? And the answer is yes, because it contributes to economic growth, right? And this has been proven from a lot of studies that have been done. So how do we do that? How do we improve? Well, first, what is the reason? Why do we need to improve internet in Liberia? There are several reasons. Most studies have found out that if you increase the internet access in the country, right now, our internet, only 10% of our population has access to really high-speed internet. All right, in Ghana, 80% of the population. In Sierra Leone, is about 20%. In Guinea, Ivory Coast is sort of like 40-something percent. All right, so our neighbors are doing better than us as far as giving their citizens access to reliable, affordable, high-speed internet. That's why I give them a C. Give us a C minus as well. And what the studies have shown is that the more of your population that has access to the internet, the better your economy becomes, right? So for every single improvement you do in internet access, say you improve internet access by another 10%, it contributes to your GDP at least 2 points, right? So over a 10-year period, that Liberian economy could grow by 20-30% just from internet access. And there are a lot of reasons for that. So the question becomes, how do we build this internet infrastructure? There are two recommendations out there. One, there was a study done in 2014. The study was commissioned by LTA, and they hired this French telecom consulting company to do the study. And the consultants came back and said, hey, you guys want to build a national infrastructure that where at 80%, 90% of Liberians have access to fiber optic internet, which is really high speed. It's going to improve your GDP and all those things, but it's going to cost about $66 million to do it. And what they said is that the fiber network that we recommend building will have 5 different routes, right? You have one running from the Sierra Leonean border to the Ivorian border along the coast. You have another running from the Lofa Guinea border, all the way down to Harper, and then you have 3 3 north-south routes running from Bomi to Upper Nimba, running from Buchanan to Yikipa, and all of these fiber optic routes will be interconnected for redundancy. And they propose that this would improve internet within the country. It will allow better education, better health system. It will allow better e-commerce. A lot of entrepreneurs will jump on board, like what's happening in India, that has a really well entrenched internet infrastructure. So the study recommended all those things, but it was too expensive. You see, so and the study also said that the government can get a loan to pay for it. But the problem I have with the study is that it assumed that we will have to spend $44 million per mile. I'm sorry, $44,000 per mile of cable that we lay, fiber optic cable. By international standards, that's a little bit too expensive. The standard is about $15,000-$20,000 per mile. And if you really factor the cost of labor in Liberia and other factors there, right of way, etc., you can get that down to $8,000 per square mile. So that means that for $12,000, we can build this same infrastructure. For $12 million, we can build a national fiber optic high-speed internet infrastructure in Liberia, which is going to significantly benefit the Liberian people in terms of data access, in terms of access to information, in terms of health delivery, all kinds of things would benefit. So that's one option that's on the table, is building the network ourselves. Either government can do it or private sector. Another option that's been laid out is by a company called C Squared, which is owned by Google and is in partnership with USAID. And they've built a network within Monrovia that's about 100 miles long, a fiber optic network. but they're providing services only to the large organizations, the government, embassies, etc., as well as the telcos to connect their cellular towers within the country. So to answer your question, Dennis, we really need to build this infrastructure. It'll cost in excess of $10 to $20 million. It will pay for itself because we can lease the capacity to the telcos, to private ISPs, internet service providers, and other businesses. And over a 10-year period, 20-year period, the Liberian government will recover that cost, and the country will benefit economically, socially as well as a whole if this is put in place.
Let's look at the cost benefit, right, and comparing this with other projects, right? Because it's always the opportunity cost. What do we forego to do this? We hear other competing priorities like roads, like water, like electricity. Now you come here with internet. How do we prioritize based on the cost benefit analysis?
You're absolutely right. It's a question for those who control the those decisions. But my opinion is that it's you really don't have to prioritize. Water, roads are a basic human need. Internet sort of lays on top of that in terms of our hierarchy of needs. The other thing I would say is that even though Liberia has pretty poor roads, based on my experience, even though our water system is in shambles, our electricity system is starting to build up after the Civil War, and we've increased capacity with the hydro development at Mount Coffee. We're generating more electricity now than we did post-war, right after the war ended. But cellular services is the biggest sector in our entire economy. It's the biggest in terms of revenue by the telcos. It's the biggest in terms of tax generation. It's the biggest in terms of consumption. So I think you have to look at it from that perspective: is what do Liberians really need, in terms of infrastructure? But I think you cannot say one is better than the other. You cannot say roads are better than telecommunications. You cannot say water is better than water. It is a life-saving resource, but telecommunications is just as important as those other needs that Liberians have, because there's a huge demand for it, and it's necessary in order to move the country into a digital future, which is the rest of the world is moving into that future now.
And Lionel, with specific focus on the youth of Liberia and talking about building an internet infrastructure that will lead to a better and reliable internet service in Liberia. Talking about unemployment, especially the youth, should we reach the point of getting this infrastructure built and a reliable internet, how does that increase the availability or the provision of jobs for young people, and in what specific areas?
Well, the analogy I would use is in a country like India, which has about 1 billion people, and their economy is largely dependent on internet infrastructure, and it was a calculated decision that was made by the government of India many years ago, as well as Ghana is doing the same thing. But what they did was they looked at different ways of creating jobs, and improving the economy, and they made a concerted effort to way back in the 90s to get all of the internet capacity that they could get for the country. So fast forward to 2021. I think a full 30-40% of India's GDP is dependent on internet access. So you have a lot of industries that have popped up in that country, such as some of the software engineering companies, some of the companies that provide what is it called, the call service, where support service.
Yeah, call centers.
Call centers. A lot of call centers are in India now, and call centers are only possible if you have a really a reliable and fast, high quality internet connectivity. So then that creates a lot of jobs as well. So, in terms of the use, improving Liberia's internet infrastructure and the impact on the youth as far as job creation, I think it will be significant because a lot of industries are going to come up that leverage that connectivity, such as call centers, such as entrepreneurs who start businesses that use that require that kind of internet capacity. For example, Facebook would not be possible without the U.S. having a very, very high quality, robust internet access because Facebook relies on internet connectivity of its customers to access the medium. So you're gonna see a lot of entrepreneurs coming up that want to leverage this internet connection to make money, as well as to employ that, and also require employing people to undertake their business endeavors. So you're going to see a lot of that impact on the youth. Also in terms of educational attainment, as far as the youth, one of the biggest problems now is that we have maybe a teacher shortage or teachers who are not highly qualified to provide the necessary training. You're going to have that alleviated through the access to the internet. So a lot of youth can gain access to training that they need right on the internet, no matter where you are. You're going to also see the youth, healthcare improvement for the youth, especially the younger kids. So overall, internet has proven to be beneficial in the increasing employment of youth everywhere else, in Ghana, in India, in quite a few other countries. And I think the same thing will happen for Liberia if we make an effort to improve our internet capacity in the country and accessibility and affordability.
And Dr. Bernard, I was born all the way beyond God's back, and we didn't have internet, we didn't have even rules, but where we live, okay, there was a missionaries in that place. We are one of the best libraries, the biggest libraries, and we were eating book in that town. So what you are saying is making me to even have a second thought about rules. Let's say the Southeast is cut off from the rest of the country, but let's say if we have internet and electricity and companies are there and we're doing our own business, why do I need to go anywhere else? But keep your thought on that question. We're going to take a short break and be right back.
And when we come from that short break, we'll be talking about Google and Facebook projects that they are taking all over, especially in Africa. Where is Liberia? What are we doing to take advantage of this particular project by these two giant institutions? When we come back, stay tuned. All right, folks, welcome back to Focus on Liberia. Mr. Bernard, Dennis said earlier, before we could take the break, hey, folks in the Southeast always cut off from the rest of the country during the rainy season. Maybe we can prioritize internet. They will be living happily, so maybe internet should be a priority. I know it's just a thought, but your reaction to that before we come to these two projects. I mean, this project being taken up by two major institutions, which is Facebook and Google, and how is Liberia? I mean, how can Liberia take advantage of those two?
Well, the Facebook and Google, they're two giants in the technology sector. We're on Facebook right now, so it's obvious. So with Facebook, Facebook operates on a concept that if they can provide a tool that allows the world to interact with each other and create connections, then that's sort of their vision, to create that tool. And their business model is based on the data that they collect from customers. For example, when you like something or you post something, a photo or a text, Facebook collects all that information about you. Google does the same thing, but they do it in a different way. They collect your searches. So if you search for something, they collect all that data. What are you searching about? Where are you searching from? When are you searching? And they pull all that data. So what they realize is that you can only access Facebook or Google if you have internet connection, right? And if you have reliable and fast internet connection, because Facebook is data driven. So they've taken it, and they realize also that a lot of emerging countries, like the countries in Africa, don't have reliable internet connectivity that allows them to access Facebook or Google. And these companies have made a ton of money. So in an effort to get more customers across the continent and also solve this problem of internet access, both companies have taken on various initiatives to improve internet access, especially in rural areas in Africa. So, for example, Facebook, and as well as Facebook, launched this project called, I believe it's called Facebook Free Internet or something. I can't remember the exact name. But basically what they did was they made a deal with all of the internet companies or phone companies in Africa to allow customers in each country to access Facebook for free. So this is why when you're in Liberia and you get on Facebook, it actually, do you want the free Facebook, which doesn't show a lot of pictures? It's sort of a low bandwidth. Facebook is paying the phone companies for you to be able to access Facebook direct in that way. It's a low data access. So it's affordable. It's an affordable way for you to get on Facebook. Google, in turn, they did things more technical. They tried launching these balloons. They're called loons, 2 miles above the earth. 2 miles above the ground. And they were trying to create a satellite of balloons that surround the globe. So if you're in a rural area in Liberia or in Ivory Coast or wherever, the balloon would beam an internet signal down to you, and you have internet access that way. I mean, it was a far-fetched idea, but it worked. But the problem was that Google could not control how the wind would blow these balloons all over the place. They could not control the navigation of these balloons. So in 2018 or 2019, 2 years ago, they cut that project loose. I think it was called Google Loan Project or something. So now Google has started a brand new project, which is it's called Equiano. I can't remember the exact name. And this project, what it entails is they're going to lay fiber optic cable under the ocean around Africa, right? Which is much more direct. They've invested, $50 billion in this project. They've laid fiber around the world in other countries, but this is the first project where they're laying fiber from South Africa to Lisbon, Portugal, and Europe, and it's going to stop in phase one. It's going to stop in Nigeria, because Equiano is the name of this Nigerian author who was a former slave. He bought his freedom, and so this project is named after him. So what Google is trying to do is in phase one, they're going to lay this fiber cable. It's going to go right along the coast of Africa. It's going to pass right by Liberia as it goes up to Europe. But only Nigeria is going to be connected. It's going to be finished by this year, 2021. And the goal is that in phase two, they're going to start connecting other countries to this fiber optic cable, which is 10 times faster than the regular fiber optic cable. And part of the reasons they want to do that is because they want to improve internet access in each of these African countries that are not landlocked along the coast. They also want to build data centers in a lot of these countries because they want customers there. They want to store customer data where they're collecting it. So these are some of the things that Google and Facebook are doing to improve internet access. Facebook, they also tried the balloon path. They closed that project because, again, it was too complicated for them. But now what they're doing is they're sort of subsidizing access to internet, to Facebook specifically, in these African countries. But Google is taking a much more direct route by building this high-speed undersea cable that could potentially link Liberia We already have a cable coming in, but it's one point of failure. If that cable goes down, we're in trouble. So this Google cable could be an alternative, even faster alternative, once they start reaching out to countries in phase 2.
And how do we get connected? We talk to Google, or Google just come walking in?
Well, the cable is not going to be done. The first phase is not going to be done until the end of this year. And this first phase, they've already said that, okay, we're only going to connect Nigeria, all right, for this first phase. And it's sort of a ceremonial connection because the project is named after a Nigerian revolutionary from back in the day. But in phase 2, which will likely be 2022, 2023, Google is actually going to reach out to the Liberian government and say, hey, do you guys want to connect to this cable? And they're going to make it really cost effective for connecting, because Google has a ton of money. They want these countries to connect to this fiber optic cable because they want to have a presence there, and they want to improve connectivity, and they want to have Liberians be able to access affordable and reliable internet. So to answer your question, when the time comes, they will reach out to the telcos and the powers that be in Liberia, and give them a proposal on how to connect to their fiber cable. But that's not going to be for another 2 years or so.
Right. And I'm thinking thinking ahead to those years. I mean, what can possibly be the reason Liberia will not take part? Is it because we cannot afford even the cost, howbeit low, or there will be no priority? Maybe the government is doing something else. What can likely be the cause? Because I'm just excited about this, but is it a foregone conclusion that we're going to be a part of it?
Well, my hope is that it is. That's one of the reasons why I'm describing it here on the show. If we could go back in time to the ACE cable. By the way, ACE stands for Atlantic Cable to Europe. And it's a cable that runs from South Africa, again, all the way to Europe, to France. And that came to Liberia in 2010. And it changed internet access in Liberia significantly. It lowered the cost and increased the reliability. As you remember, back in the days, during the rainy season, which is from this time, from April to August or September, cell phone service in Liberia is pretty bad because the phone companies were using satellite, and those satellites are susceptible to atmospheric conditions. So when it's reading, the signal is not strong enough because the rain interferes with it. If it's windy, so the fiber cable, which is buried under the ocean, doesn't have those problems. Whether it's raining outside or it's windy or whatever, it's snowing, it doesn't matter because it's underground. So that improved internet in Liberia significantly in terms of reliability. In terms of the cost went down significantly as well. The speed went up, and you notice that a lot of people started having access to 3G phones, and now they're introducing 4G phones. It's only because of that cable. So that cable brought 10 gigabits per second internet pipe into the country. So this is going to be double that. Now, as far as whether or not we were to take advantage of it, it all depends. I don't know. That process, a consortium was set up, the ACE consortium. The cell phone companies had to buy into that project. The Liberian government had to take out a loan for $25 million from the World Bank to buy into this ACE project. They're still paying back that loan, and a lot of capacity is not even being used because the cell phone companies figure out we can get away with just the capacity that we have. We don't need to improve the service because we're making money already. So there are a lot of factors there, but it's going to have to be motivated by some sort of incentive or directive to improve internet access in Liberia, and sort of understanding that this is a priority. We really need to improve access in rural areas. Even if we don't have roads going to villages, as long as those villagers have internet access where they can talk to relatives, they're taking advantage of data connections, such as calling people by voicemail, and learning. Their kids can learn through e-learning by watching a video or having a connection with a teacher that's in Monrovia or across the world. I think they're going to be okay. I think, that education is a critical part of national development. And, to deliver that education doesn't have to be one in person, as we're seeing with this pandemic, where a lot of student education is being done online, no matter where you are. So, it's got to be part of the national dialogue as far as whether or not we want to get into this Google fiber that's coming in, and whether or not we want to build a fiber optic infrastructure, considering that we have other problems such as electricity is not reliable, water is not available in most places. People have to get water from natural sources like rivers and creeks that might be unsanitary. So, I really don't have the answer, Dennis. But what I know is what's currently going on is that a lot of Liberians rely on telecommunications for their livelihood.
Yeah,
a lot of Liberians rely on telecommunications to connect to friends and family and to get things done.
Right, and demand supply, right? The demand is very high, so why not take advantage of it?
And our population is going to go up at least 30% within the next 20 years. So we got to prepare for that additional demand that's coming. And the younger people have gravitated to technology, and they're embracing the digital revolution. So if they don't have the accessibility, the affordability, or reliability, they're going to be stifled even more. Considering that healthcare and education is also of low quality in our country.
Yeah. Now the fiber is passing the end of West Point. Now to get it from Cape Mount to Cape Palmer is going to be another talk of war.
Yep, certainly. And Dennis, let's read some comments. I have a question that brought us on national security with the infrastructure and the one Google, has planned to provide, and if we can build one ourselves. But the first comment here from Chris B. Jones, he said, great topic. This one is from Emmanuel Washington. Internet service in Liberia is extremely poor. To be frank, I think the tackles in Liberia are too relaxed because there is no competition. This one is from Emmanuel. Again, great topic tonight. My respect to the entire team for putting this together and the great brains that have availed themselves to be on the show. God bless you all. He's basically here watching live from Birmingham. You see, somebody's watching from all the way, isn't it? Falling from New Delhi, India. I'm proud. I think meant to say I'm proud of you, Mr. Bernard. Yes, we are proud of this gentleman talking about the current state of internet in Liberia. Austin Tamba joining us from all the way Nitro Town. He said it is very poor, and he's not missing a words on that. Nimle Anthony Chia Jr. following from New Delhi. Okay, he's the same. He's corrected himself there. I say Johnson, right. The internet is still, I think, in D, not even C. I think he's trying to give the internet service there or D instead of the C manuals that Lionel talked about was giving. Saying he make the correction there. Emmanuel Washington, in Liberia, consumers are extremely exploited. You're right. 1 gigabyte go through 1 day in Liberia can go through 1 day in Liberia. You can use it for 1 day. Skill set is also important. Let's hear from Victoria or Tape. So the internet service providers are cheaters. They are corrupt too. I was in Liberia in December and spent $5 USD a day for that. And this one is from Emmanuel Shema. Available and affordable internet using fiber optics with grow. I think man will grow our economy through e-commerce also. That is an excellent comment there. I agree with you. I think he makes the correction there. Because India has affordable and high-speed internet, 98% of businesses run online. Dennis, that's the point you are making, right? If internet is available, if I'm in Morovia, I can talk to my uncle in Sastan. I can even call him video. If he has a question about something, I can show him, right? And also, road would not be any impediment anymore because we can communicate, we can see each other. Sam Wallow, Rwanda is more comparable example of a nation that has done well with IT and job creation. And we Liberians can do that too. Musu Stewart writes, but it's also helpful to have national expertise. National expertise. Is Liberia really? Anthony C is ready. Dennis Jai is ready. Dr. Leonard here, he's also ready. I don't know who's wasting our time here. I wish this could happen faster. The benefits outweigh the cost in the land, and Jones will agree with me to say absolutely. Let me come back to you, Dr. Bernard.
Nima is saying, thanks for the discussion. How can you bring this discussion to the Librarian Airways? And exactly that's what we are doing. We have to pay money in Monrovia to have this broadcast on the local station in Monrovia. We are calling on people to help us so that we can afford to give some money to radio stations in Liberia. It doesn't cost us much. Some are charging us as low as $250 to get this done on a monthly basis. So if you love what we do here, please drop us a line and let us be able to pay for our broadcast to be carried in Monrovia so that other people in other countries can benefit and not only those with internet access. And talking about the benefits of using internet to my people, Cisco telepresence. Telemedicine is another critical area that can be used for hooking up Liberian hospitals to other hospitals in advanced country. You can be in Cape Mount County, and a doctor at the Mass General Hospital in Massachusetts can treat you from telemedicine. So that's the point Joe Moyu is making.
Yeah, and that will certainly help us, Dennis, if our doctors, can connect, network with other doctors in the Western world, and it can only be possible through reliable internet connectivity. It will help to cure our people.
And I want to be able to teach at Sino High, so I don't have to be there anymore if they have internet access. I can be right here in Atlanta, Georgia, and teach at Sino High.
See, that's another good thing there, and I can be here too. And my show can be aired in Liberia, and people will learn the little I try to share here.
Will Tobo Tape say, I commend the government of Liberia that we have the internet in Liberia and it can be maintained. Let us pray for it together. Prayers. I'm a Christian, but sometimes this whole idea of prayer, it doesn't cut it, right?
No, then this is not anything to pray for.
Out the principles. Instead of having Google have a fiber optic cable running there, I mean, you're not going to connect to it. You're going to fast and pray for that. I'm not buying this prayer on this one.
No, I'm not buying a prayer. And you know me and your prayer business. I'm not a prayer guy. But Dr. Bernard, the question I want to bring to you, earlier you talked about a study that was done. I think you said about $66 million to build, an internet infrastructure in Liberia that will provide reliable internet in Liberia. And then this Google project, when you said that it may be a year, 2 or 3 from now, that nations like Liberia may take advantage of it. What will you advise from your, experience with this kind of infrastructure? Will you advise the Liberian government to find out $66 million, whatever the exact amount was, to build our infrastructure right away? Or will you advise, well, maybe we should wait on Google so that we can be able to take advantage of the project that they are bringing to Africa? What will you advise, given the need right now?
Well, what I would advise is that you got to look at this in 2 parts. The Google fiber optic that's coming, it's going to come right to the Liberian shores and stop there. So it's almost as if somebody bringing the electricity to your house and it's on the pole. So now you got to go to the pole and bring the current inside your house, all right, and distribute it within your house to your electrical wiring that you hire someone to do. So what we need to do first is, determine how we can get additional internet capacity coming to our shores. Right now, we've only got one pipe coming in If it goes down, the country is in trouble. So first we got to determine what other options do we have as far as increasing that capacity that's coming in. All right. So for example, instead of relying just on LEC, say if we had another electricity company in Liberia as an alternative. Now, the second thing to consider is once this capacity comes into the country, how are we going to distribute it so that it's available widespread, even in rural areas? So those are two problems that we got to tackle in terms of infrastructure strategy or growth strategy. So the 66 million, my personal thought, it was overpriced. Is significantly more than necessary to build a national fiber optic infrastructure. We can do this for far less, for 20% of that amount. For I think less than $10 million, we can build a national infrastructure. But we don't have to do it all at one time. We can do it in phases. All right, this is something that can be done a little bit at a time, as long as we're making progress. So we can spend, $2 or $3 million a year to build, and we don't have to do it ourselves. We can get, donor funds from donor countries. As long as we have a strategy together, we have something that's presentable, that's actionable. We can present it to international donors and say, hey, instead of giving us money to do this, just take a small piece of that and give it to us to build our national infrastructure. So that reduces the burden of debt that may be required by the government. We can also bring in private partners, investors from overseas, the telcos as well, and form a partnership of investors to build this telecommunications infrastructure, meaning that they'll all have a stake in the revenue that's generated from it.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of options there. We don't have to take Liberian tax dollars to build this thing. It can be done with donor money, with besides debt, accumulating debt to build this thing. We can do it with donor money. We can do it with partnership investment money, such that they have an equity stake in the infrastructure, and whatever revenue is generated from it. And a lot of revenue will be generated from it, as has been the case in other countries. They share in the revenue. So this can definitely be done, but the biggest problem in Liberia, I think is affordability. Going back to that, is that the average Liberian makes, if you factor in the big shots with the poor people, the average Liberian in the country makes about $50 a month, right? And right now the average Liberian is spending 20% of that $50 on data and internet access. And that is the bottom line problem there. So, 20% of $50 is what, $10. So now if you're spending $10 of your income, whether you're a quick driver or you're selling goods, you're spending 20% of your income on data services. That leaves only the remaining 80% that you've got to spend on food, on shelter, on education, on clothing, on sustaining a standard of living. So if this is any other countries in Ghana is only 3%. In the US here, it's less than 1% if your income is being spent, depending on where you live, your income is being spent. So we're putting a huge burden on Liberians with the significant charges that they're incurring as far as data access, and that needs to be addressed through regulation, through improving our infrastructure. The cell phone companies, because of competition between them, haven't been making a lot of money recently. So, I remember back in the day, you could make 3-day calling for free. But LTA came in and sort of messed things up. Now they're making a bit more money, but not as much as before. Especially when there was a lot of competition. Now you've only got 2 carriers in the market. They're starting to make money, but I personally think that it's more needs to be done to ensure that the customers, the service is regulated properly, so customers are not being exploited. More needs to be done to make sure that the infrastructure that gives access to the internet all over the country, no matter where you are in rural areas, needs to be done, because that's going to contribute to national development. More needs to be done to regulate the sector effectively.
So Dr. Bernard, two things I'm thinking as you, because the way you describe it is so simple. Like less than 10,000, I mean, we can have the infrastructure to have high-speed
10 million, 10 million.
Yeah, 10 million. Sorry, 10,000. I think even you can afford it to do that. So for 10 million, we can have that infrastructure to provide high-speed internet throughout the country. In my mind, like, this is so small. What is stopping this? Is it a lack of will? Is it a lack of knowledge? They don't know what to do. But because of time, I want us to move quickly into cybersecurity, right? And even before cybersecurity, somebody is laying the foundation, the cable, right? Here, America is kicking against, China 5G coming here. Now we have another country laying a cable that we're going to be tapping into for the whole country. How secure is that? They're going to be taking our data. They're going to tap and see exactly what we're doing. National security issue. Let's talk about that even before we come to the cybersecurity issue. How reliable, how vulnerable are we if somebody else is giving us this fiber optic?
That's a really good question. If we tap into the Google fiber cable, you're absolutely right. Google is a company that collects data on on people who use their search engine and their various services, and they use that data with advertisers to present to you products and services that match your search criteria implicitly. So that is an issue of concern. But the Google business model has worked here in the developing world. So a lot of the developing world has the customers have given up some measure of privacy in exchange for the convenience. All right, what that means is that if you don't use Google, what are you going to use? But if you use Google, you give up some measure of your privacy as far as the kinds of searches that you're doing in exchange for the free access to this service. You're not paying for Google. So the Liberians have to ask themselves, are we willing to give up some measure of privacy in exchange for access to this fiber cable and access to Google services? Liberians are already using Google right now. I believe it's the #1 search engine in the country. So we're already giving up some of that access, but this is going to improve our access to that resource. Whether or not some of the privacy issues implied in that access has to be looked at. How much data will it be taken out of Liberia, and what kind of incentive are they going to provide to the country in exchange for that data? Here in the U.S., Gmail is free. Gmail is free in Liberia. You don't pay for Gmail. Google owns Gmail. So, what is Google getting in exchange for that free access to email? What is Google getting back in exchange for that same access to your search results? So, I don't think it's that much to give up for something that's going to improve our national development. We're already giving up our data anyway. We're just likely going to be giving up more of it with more people coming online and more people using the search engine. So it's something that the policymakers in the country have to scrutinize and look at the AU and other African countries and see what they're doing in terms of ensuring the privacy of their citizens' data. I know the EU has been on Google's and Facebook about the privacy of their data. They're requiring EU citizens or Google to provide opt-in features, meaning that before you can Google or Facebook, any one of these companies can sell your data to third parties, they have to get your express consent to do that. So those are all, we got to look at the agreement and see whether or not it benefits Liberia in terms of national development, and what do we have to give up to get this service.
So overall, even currently, should we be worried about cybersecurity?
Oh yes, cybersecurity is it's a hydra, and this is a snake that has multiple heads. You cut off one head, it grows another one. And it is definitely front and center in terms of internet access in Liberia, internet security, and privacy in the country right now.
Mr. Sear, you are on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, talking about internet security or cyber security. Musu writes, cybersecurity threats are low in Liberia. She's not ruling that out, except that she said that it's low in Liberia. I would definitely buy into the equity stake in this venture once it's set up and done correctly. She writes. This one is from Emmanuel Shema. Threats are very low because we have less than 15% asset in internet. Yeah, the higher the accessibility, the higher the threat. And then let me bring you in here. I know your mind was blown away when you heard about $10 million. This is something the government can go in its coffers today and put that money, find a company that will build the infrastructure for us. Maybe it might cost that company to do it for another $5 million. I don't know the details on that. The experts will tell us. And then we can get it in built. And even whether you're in Grand Crew, you don't have road, you're fine, right? You stay in connection with your people. That's what Musu is saying. Right, yes, she said priority, priority, priority. That's the strategy. There's a comment she put here. Yeah, it is. She said, we are talking strategy and priority here.
And Mr. Sear, just imagine how much can be accrued. I was talking about living in Dodokan where there are no roads, but we have the education was solid. I mean, just look at me. That's an example.
I see why you are so smart.
Right, the education was solid. We stay in the place and bury our heads in the library books, right? And so, if you can build that educated citizenry, even though they are in the remotest part of the world, but they can download ebooks and read. I can be teaching my friends and my relatives right there from here. I don't know what stopped them from being cybersecurity certified, even though you are all the way in Bapolu. Right. So, and if you have that educated citizenry, we have jobs being outsourced to Glay in Nimba County or to Kwaye District. You are in that area, but because you have internet and electricity, we must add, you are able to work anywhere in the world and have that education. And so businesses are going in these areas. Forget roads. I can be and do my do.
And then talking about if the internet, were that available, affordable, and cheaper and accessible everywhere in the country, will not be raising $200 of our hard-earned money to pay a radio station to focus on library education material. The guy in Grand Crew, my home county, said, well, let me go to Focus on Liberia or YouTube channel and watch their show for today. I think I'm going to learn something. The teacher in my county said, whoa, they're talking about internet. Let me play their video in my class because there is internet. And, so there's a lot the country can benefit looking at the cost and benefit analysis that our guest Lionel talked about earlier. I mean, for 15 million, we can get it started. And I think our policy makers should pay attention today and act quickly. I think it will be money well spent and will benefit the country immensely. Dennis?
And so, Lionel, what do we do to get policymakers and the gatekeepers to buy into what you are saying? Or they look at you as a threat and say, well, let a man sit down over there. What can we do to get people to buy into this kind of idea so that we can get our country out? Because right now, it's like we are approaching everything politically. Librarians want savior. We want good internet. Oh, let's elect this person or let's elect that person, even though they will become the gatekeepers and policymakers. But how can we get people to act to solve these kind of problems that we're talking about, Lionel?
Well, that's a really good question, Dennis. I think the way to get people to act on these some of the things that we've discussed here, as far as improving the affordability of internet in Liberia, improving the access and widespread reach of internet, improving the reliability, and leveraging some of the measures that are being taken by companies like Google and Facebook. I think the first step is creating awareness. You know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, one of my core tenets is that, you know, we have an obligation to speak truth to power, and, you know, in an honest, brutal, and direct way if necessary. So I think your show, inviting me on here today, and, you know, and some of the, you know, some of the other pundits that have been writing articles, have been speaking on this subject. I think those are all the things that you can do to get the attention of the policymakers in Liberia. And because, you know, these people are very busy. You know, they have a lot of things that are, you know, that are coming at them at the same time. You mentioned the question of priority. You know, if you're, you know, if you're a decision maker in the country, and, you know, you're getting, you know, you have to make decisions regarding national security. You have to make decisions regarding, you know, education. You have to make decisions regarding roads, access to roads. You have to make decisions regarding the Liberian budget and allocation, legislature, you know, the executive branch of government, the legal branch of government, the judicial branch. You know, that's all you can do is create awareness by talking about these issues. And the thing is that a lot of consumers in the telecommunications market in it that use data and internet all day long, a lot of them, you know, they raise complaints with these institutions. But the question becomes, are they being heard? You see, are people listening to them, to their complaints about that? Not only you know, internet services, but also things like electricity, water access, healthcare. So you know, I think that's the best you can do for now is create awareness, and hopefully something sinks in to those who are listening, or those who are in institutions that regulate and oversee these industries. Are they listening to the customers? Are they listening to global trends that impact locally? Are they you know, do they have their ears to the ground? So you know, it's you know, you know, it's a struggle, but I think that, you know, there's a proverb that those who speak loudest are those who are going to be heard. So I think your show and others who are speaking loudly on the subject of, you know, some of the exploitation, some of the lack of you know, lack of service and shortcomings in the internet sector in Liberia. You know, they eventually they're going to be heard.
Thank you. On that
And, and go ahead, Dennis.
no, we're closing now. So, but make your point, then we can close.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bernard. Thank you. I remember we had a show pretty much about a year ago now on this very subject. And my hope was that policymakers who are listening will by now have a decision on how we get internet connectivity in Liberia reliable and affordable for our people, because it's going to help boost the Liberian economy. That has not happened. I'm just wondering whether or not you who have been in the field, should you write you know, a plan that, hey, this is the problem. Internet connectivity is poor in Liberia. I know $10 million can do it, and this is how it can be done. This is how the money can be spent. This is the benefit for the country in terms of economy, education, and all that. I don't know. Will it take a written plan like that presented to the Liberian government for them to act? I just don't know. I just wondering. I'm not trying to tell you that what you should do, but I think that may be another option. But we can't say thank you enough for always honoring our invitation here, focus on Liberia in helping to educate not only ordinary Liberians, but also policymakers who need to act on these kind of discussion for the betterment of Liberia. Dennis?
Thank you again, Dr. Bernard. We want to say thanks to our viewers for watching. At 5 o'clock, we are not keeping this lazy. We're going to be here with chemistry and society, and we're going to be discussing carbon monoxide poisoning. We had a terrible, terrible incident where an entire family was wiped out from carbon monoxide poisoning, and that has not been That has always been the trend. So until then, goodbye and God bless you.
We are Librarians. Librarian is our home. Librarian people. Librarian.